adopt the conventional journalism approach. A journalist who writes a story has his byline, so he's not anonymous. Anywhere you put a story on the social media, the first poster, if they are able to retain his name, irrespective of whether it is 1 million posts, his name will be there. He can be identified and held accountable. That is one of the smartest ways to eliminate fake news. It is causing a lot of danger to our society. Meanwhile,
that will require some software. I think that's a brilliant idea if it's possible to do it. But certainly, I mean, that's a way to walk back to the originator of a copy. But it's a high tech.
Yes.
It's a high tech effort. But
as you said,
it's a long route. But as you said, if there's an origination, if there's origination of a story or of an idea, then it ought to have a trail to say that this thing is coming from this person, and the more you post it, the more it comes out that this is the originator of it. I believe that is software developers, WhatsApp or others, might think about this. Yes.
The other development is the easing of the lockdown. With effect from Monday, there will be some respite. The Presidential Task Force has indicated that there will be openings. For instance, there will be opening of banks between the hours of 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. And at the 22nd briefing of the Presidential Task Force, they gave indication that when banks open, social distancing, temperature monitoring, as well as hygienic measures must also continue. Some ministries, government ministries, departments, and agencies too are to resume. However, this will be based on specific grade levels and on specific days. To continue to sustain their economy, some critical construction, manufacturing, as well as pharmaceutical and agricultural processing will also have to resume. Be that as it may, security is also to enforce serious measures and to ensure that social distancing is observed. However, across the nation, the curfew is from 8 p.m. to 6 p.m. and it is effective across all the states. And the chairman of the Presidential Task Force says that this easing will be done 2 weeks consecutively across 6 weeks, so that the coming back to normal will be gradual. But in the interim, all necessary measures to be taken to ensure that the gains we have registered are not lost.
Well, the gradual opening is the ideal thing to do, because locking down the economy for too long will be quite devastating on the national economy. But again, we also have to take cognizance of the fact that we're still recording coronavirus on daily basis. And, well, we're not praying for any exponential level of this pandemic. But it's important for us to realize that until we begin to have to flatten the curve, then we may begin to talk about, general opening of the nation's economic system. But for now, I think there's a little fear. Some people have concerns that until we begin to stem down, the increase the cases on daily basis, then we're not talking, specifically about having, won the war, even about to win the war in the first instance, because testing has become a very serious matter in this connection. If you don't have as many tests as possible, there'll be no indication that the curve is going to flatten. Because, for instance, you mentioned the Cross River State that has not recorded any index case, as well as Kogi State, for instance. And some persons are also saying that if you are not carrying out extensive tests, you cannot be so conclusive about the fact that they don't have index cases. Look at what happened in Enugu a couple of days ago. Somebody who traveled from Kano down to Enugu, and incidentally, the person resides in a high populated area of Enugu, in a Baba area, where on artisans and low income earners live, and that tells a big story, because she has spent 4 days before symptoms, emerged. And what has she been doing? How did she get back? She entered with some public transport.
Lockdowns across the state.
Exactly. And when you say you have this lockdown, interstate lockdown, I don't think it's working. And as Kingsley was saying earlier on, see, this time around, we don't have to joke with this. especially the subnationals. It cannot be the same story of when subnationals do not adhere to policies coming from the federal government. This time around, anything about COVID-19 is concurrent. Right, so you have to play your own part. And if you don't play your part, then it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, talking about cooperation, there's another indication from Cross River that also is very worrying. The Commissioner of Health was emphatic that if people are sent from NCDC to come to Cross River State for any test, upon arrival, they will be quarantined for 14 days, and after they have tested to ensure that they are negative before they will be allowed to carry out their work. I think there should be synergy between the states and the federal to ensure that we cooperate to fight this. We cannot afford scuffles.
What would have happened as the NCDC now sent a special team on the directive of the president to Kano? So Kano would have quarantined the NCDC team for 14 days. In the meantime, the strange deaths are going on, and then Kano, which is supposed to be on lockdown for 2 weeks, will now have his own lockdown extended. So how do you reconcile that? I mean, some NCDC officials have themselves contracted the COVID-19, and the DG of the NCDC has been in touch with them because they are at isolation centers where they are recuperating, because they are also part of the frontline workers. But there is no presumption that prima facie, an NCDC official is a carrier of the virus. So what then would necessitate the quarantine that has been suggested by the state government? It's like saying, look, you take ill, you want to go and visit a medical doctor, so you first quarantine the medical doctor before he attends to you.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know. It's a bit bizarre.
Something is wrong about that. Something is totally wrong. And I don't wish Cross River any ill or something, but until they have the experience of coronavirus, in that state, they'll begin to understand what it's all about. It's not about politics. It's not about how could you quarantine people who are coming to carry out tests. I mean, it's not reasonable, if you ask me, because we're in this fight together. Right.
There's mutual suspicion, and you cannot cooperate when you have mutual suspicion.
Exactly.
The other interesting story, too, is that if we look back, when did we have our first lockdown? That was 6th of April. And if you go by it, for the first 2 weeks, the second 2 weeks, we're going to have lockdowns. And already, the United Nations Foundation for Population is indicating that the world could be seeing an unwanted pregnancies up to the tune of about 47 million. It is saying that in 114 countries, low-income countries, there's a tendency that 450 million people in a lockdown will produce a lot of unwanted pregnancies.
Yeah. What we call it unwanted is a game of balancing. People are dying of coronavirus, and other people are giving birth. So it's a question of balancing, natural balancing.
November and December, the maternity wards will be very busy.
All right, let's go.
In all parts of the world.
Exactly. Let's go to editorials now. It's from the Nation. Necessity. That's let's take advantage of local COVID-19 inventions to develop R&D. That's research and development. We've been harping on this for a while now, on how Nigeria can, on its own, develop locally made medication that can address COVID-19. The editorial is talking about efforts being made by some universities, as well about Obafemi Awolowo University that has something to offer. Also, it's talking about also Bayero University, Kano. These are universities that have come up with some remedial approach to this in terms of medication. Now, Abuja State University too also has come up with a report of development of geographical tracking device and the COVID-19 risk map and others. So what else can you tell us about the editorial?
I think what has happened on is that, necessity is the mother of invention. And the editorial is appraising that this COVID-19 is new in the world and everybody is thrown off balance. Therefore, to attend, O Israel, and it is commending some higher institutions that have come up with initiatives either with ventilators or one thing or the other to help this situation. He also identified what the World Health Organization praised Nigeria for, the first nation to identify the genome of the COVID-19, which is the positive direction towards a vaccine and a cure. But the editorial is saying that we should go beyond that. We should continue to rely on some initiative here and not just continue to wait on vaccine coming from the world. Chairman of the COVID-19. The other day we were asking, how can you have a cure for COVID-19 about 4 or 5 years ago before it arrived? Of course, coronavirus is coming up in several phases, and therefore their genome by pattern might be similar. There was also a professor who announced that, give me 5 people, I can cure him, I have a concoction for it. Only yesterday, the chairman of the Presidential Task Force, the SGF, indicated that they may be asking the permission of Mr. President to see if they can import the liquid contraption that has been made in Malagasy for cure in Nigeria. He said we will ask for a plane load of it if it works. Already, President Trump is on record to have said that they will give $2 million to Malagasy to continue the research and produce those things, provided they are possible to cure. We can get such things if we go natively with some of our herbal things, but we must have courage to test and try them.
Yes, there are a lot of claims in Nigeria, from persons who have carried out one research or another, especially Iwu that you talked about. But I'm not even believing that it is not possible for even a patient to say, look, fine, let me be the guinea pig. Let me be the guinea pig, and let's start testing out. If somebody says he has something, I don't see any reason why we cannot say, okay, let's start this testing. But to prove him wrong or right, because like you said, it's like a gamble. Globally, people are trying all manner of medication in America.
Even for a vaccine, it takes about a year or 2 for it to come. But now, the World Health Organization has bridged it. 2 people have come out for tests. One, unfortunately, has died. One has accepted the vaccine, and they are watching him.
All right. Bayo Toyobe, would like to thank you. You referred to Malagasy. That's an old name for Madagascar. Madagascar is an island off the Indian coast of the African continent.
Yes.
Well, the SGF, I hope, that wasn't another instance of him being misquoted or just a joke that has now been taken to be a serious point. Because on Good Morning Nigeria and indeed elsewhere, institutions and establishments have been talking about their own capacity to work out, treatments or cures or other reliefs, for COVID-19, including phytomedicine and niprid. Pax Herbal, which is a monastery in Edo State, have also done some things. But let's see how those things pan out, in the coming days and weeks. Bayo, on that note, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
See you again tomorrow. All right, it's Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll get ahead with our reports and discussions on how some states are dealing with COVID-19.
Coronavirus, also known as COVID-19, is spreading at an alarming rate all over the globe, including Nigeria. With the number of infected persons in Nigeria increasing daily, prevention is better than cure. Coronavirus has no cure. The virus spreads from one person, who affects 2 persons, and by the time the affected person is isolated, the 2 persons have affected 4, and it keeps spreading. You must take preventive measures to save yourself and that of the people around you. Always wash your hands with soap and water. Put distance between yourself and others. Whenever you cough or sneeze, cover your mouth. Clean and disinfect surfaces. Stay at home if you're sick and contact the proper authorities. Together, we can cut down the spread of the coronavirus. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest TV network.
Welcome, dear. Have you washed your hands?
I'm inside my house again. This thing not the key black man.
I don't know if it's misinformation or poor hygiene that will kill you first. Coronavirus is real, and good hygiene practice will save your life. Anyway, no hand washing, no eating.
I will not take care of it. I was one of the parents.
Coronavirus is real and it's on the rise. But you can help yourself and help others to be safe. Remember, we can stop the spread. It's in your hands.
This message is from the Akinfade Foundation in partnership with the National Orientation Agency with support from MacArthur Foundation.
not know that our enemies have no face? They are indigents of no state. They come from no place. And if this boat capsizes, every one of us will go under. So when the drums sound, let everybody answer. Do not say, I am the Iroko when the forest is burning. Do not say, I am the Obeche when the forest is burning. Our differences will not stop us from perishing together. So when the drums sound, let everybody answer.
The month of Ramadan is here again, and we at Al Habibia Islamic Society once again call on all faithful to observe the physical and social distancing directive of the government to curb the spread of COVID-19. Always wash your hands with soap and water, use hand sanitizers and face masks when necessary, and stay at home. Observe your obligatory salat, tarawih, tahajjud, du'as, and askars with your families from the comfort of your home. Stay at home. Stay safe. Stop the spread of COVID-19. This message is from Al Habibia Islamic Society. From Allah to you, a light.
I just don't understand this coronavirus thing. Is it real?
See, coronavirus, known as COVID-19, it's a global problem and has killed thousands of people in China, Italy, Spain, UK, US, and other countries around the world.
Okay. Now, why are they saying that we should stay home?
Because if you go outside and get in contact with someone who is infected, you become infected and then come back home, affect your family. That's how it happens in other countries.
Now, please, help me explain what this social distance is all about.
See, as we are now, the virus travels through the air and by touch. We must maintain 6 foot distance at all times.
Oh, so it's not by washing my hands with soap and water or hand sanitizer that is only important?
Washing of our hands regularly is very important. But we must come together and fight this virus like we did Ebola. It is our responsibility to each other.
And to guide us into this morning's discussion, let's take excerpts from the previous discussions on COVID-19 situation and reports in states as compiled by Aisha Obale.
We went ahead to say that we restrict movements in the state capital and other major suburb areas in Nasarawa State. We decided to go ahead and reduce the number of, we closed down the markets, in order to reduce this. We also shut down most of the operations that are having maybe religious organizations and the rest of that. So Nigeria was caught unawares. And it's unfortunate that you can say that this particular pandemic has given Nigeria an opportunity now to think twice, that this is the time not to abandon the healthcare as an area that we have done that. And I will give you a good example with Nasarawa State. Nasarawa State has built, a center, started building a center, that is going to be for all kinds of diseases in that area, Ebola, Lassa, and the rest of that.
So you have to test more so that you fish out those that are there and treat. Now, coming to the question you asked earlier concerning the lack, that is why NCDC said, if you have any history of travel or symptoms, come forward and get tested and self-isolate until the result is out. It's difficult to pack everybody and keep in one place. We don't have the resources. We are not ready for that. But with right information, that look, if you travel outside and come back from an area of pandemic, or you have contact with somebody who is infected, please get across to the state, a pit unit, and get tested. While the results is being awaited, please stay alone. Isolate yourself until the result is out. So this is the only way.
I'm also happy to announce that Anambra State has what is called a mega lab. That is to say, a laboratory that can test 500 samples at the same time. It is located at the State University. It is actually from Abbott Laboratories, USA. The only difficulty we're having is that it doesn't have reagents. Reagents are now being ordered. We are also working on the Federal University Teaching Hospital in Inewi. We are assisting it so that it can also become a testing center. By the time we have these two, plus our latest technology, we should be in a position to assist other states.
Happy that very helpful Nigerians are also partnering with us. We have received so many donations in the form of food commodities. We have received so many support from individual corporate entities that made some medical supplies available to us. So this is helping government to really extend the campaign.
And joining us for this morning's conversation, first via Skype, we have the Permanent Secretary, Katsina State Ministry of Health, Dr. Kabir Mustafa. Dr. Mustafa, it's good to have you this morning on Good Morning Nigeria. All right, and also with us this morning via Skype, from Cross River State is Dr. Beta Edu. He's the State COVID-19 Task Force Chairman and Commissioner for Health. Good morning and welcome to the program.
All right. Here in our Abuja studios, we have again Dr. Mohammed Kawu, who is the Acting Secretary of the FCT, Health and Human Services Secretariat. He's been with us on a number of occasions. Dr. Kawu, pleasure to have you with us on the program again.
Good morning. Good morning, Nigerians.
And then joining us from our Kano Network Center, it's our pleasure again to have Professor Isa Sadiq Abubakar. Professor Isa Sadiq Abubakar is the Director Center for Infectious Disease Research at Bayero University and a member of the Kano State Task Force on COVID-19. Professor Abubakar, pleasure to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria. Good morning, Nigeria.
Yeah, to all Nigerians, I say good morning.
All right, and last but not the least, joining us from our JOS Network Center, Professor Danladi Aboki Atu. Professor Atu is the Secretary to the State Government of Plateau and also the coordinator of the Task Force on COVID-19. Professor Danladi Atu, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Good morning, Nigerians. Welcome to this platform.
All right, gentlemen, you're welcome to the program. And we would like to begin this conversation with Professor Isa Sadiq Abubakar, who's the Director of Center for Infectious Diseases Research at Bayero University and a member of Kano State Task Force on COVID-19. Prof, Kano has been in the news since it's recorded its index case of coronavirus. And of course, there are other stories concerning multiple deaths in Kano and its environs. And of course, we have concern here as to what actually is the true position of what is happening in Kano. Many Nigerians believe that there could be two different diseases in Kano that you are yet to grapple with. Now, lead us into what the situation is at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much. The situation in Kano calls for a lot of concern. If we take a look back at what has happened over the last couple of days, we'll discover that Kano has suffered a lot of misfortune as far as the fight against COVID-19 is concerned. Within a very short time, Kano started noticing the first case and the number kept rising, whereas other states like Lagos and even the FCT and Ogun states have started having their own index cases much earlier than Kano, and their own rise, although not too good also, but our own situation in Kano was much more rapid than their own, to the extent that Kano is now on the top 3 as far as the number of cases are concerned. And then we came to a stage where we have noticed a number of deaths, majority of which we cannot explain, but then we can make some hypotheses as scientists. We are now living in a situation where we are having cases of COVID-19 being recorded at an alarming rate, and then on another side we are having our people, especially the elderly, losing their lives. So for any health worker and a scientist, it is very easy for you to draw conclusions, although not on only one point, but you can accept the fact that this could be multifactorial. However, COVID-19, we cannot divorce these dates from COVID-19, whatever other conditions we may consider. So the best thing is for us to accept the reality at hand, and that is why the state government has instituted a panel to conduct verbal autopsy. And I am aware of different groups within Kano and even some outside Kano also organizing different studies using different methodologies to try and see if they can pinpoint the diseases or whichever factor contributing to the number of deaths. But as I said earlier, COVID-19 is a significant factor for us to consider. If I am to give you an example with the hospital where I work, that is Aminu Kano Teaching Hospital, it is the apex hospital in Kano as far as provision of healthcare service is concerned. In that hospital, we are noticing a large turnout of patients with respiratory illnesses, and some of them are having illnesses affecting other organs, which from literature we have noticed are related to COVID-19 as a disease. And some of these people, whether or not they have been tested, are losing their lives. And a good number of them are elderly. And these are all points in tandem with the type of patients who are losing their lives as a result of COVID-19. We had a misfortune in the sense that at the initial inception, after the task force had started its work, a number of our members, including the co-chair, got infected and they were out of the scene. And that took us unawares. So it took us some time while we are grieving to come up and reconstitute the task force, and then the fight continued. And the second misfortune we had is that which affected the testing laboratory, where some reagents got finished, and while attempts were made to quickly restore that abnormality, then 3 of the staff working in that laboratory got infected. So the laboratory had to be decontaminated. And all this took us to a situation where for over a week or close to that, we were not testing. And it was incidentally within that period that we started noticing massive number of deaths. Unfortunately, because of that, we were not able to get most of these people tested, and the fact that majority of them died at home made the matters worse. So we were not able to pinpoint, at least take samples for COVID-19 at that stage. However, within the past 2 days, the laboratory is now back to function, and in fact, the second laboratory, which is under Bayero University, is coming up. The NCDC personnel have come. They have tested all the equipment. They have given training, including biosafety training, to the staff in that laboratory, as well as the first laboratory. So we are ready to go with the second laboratory to start working. But now the good thing with this is that for some of the cases which we have lost their lives, especially within Aminu Kano Teaching Hospital, which is the immediate environment, at least 2 of those deaths have been accounted for, and they have been related to COVID-19 because we were able to take samples while the patients were on admission before they died. And both of them were positive. And as time goes on, of course, we will intensify our efforts directed at these type of patients who will come for admission, or they will come as outpatients with symptoms suggestive of COVID-19, and we will be very aggressive in pursuing that. We try and get to the bottom of the situation. Whether these people will die later or they will recover, it's something that is not in our hands, but at least we will be able to document the main causes or contributory factors to these deaths.
All right. Professor Isa Sadiq Abubakar, I would like to thank you very much for your opening comments. We've allowed you to explain, considering the fact that Kano is now effectively on the map in terms of the rate and number of infections. But I still want to ask you one question so that we move on to the other guests. On Monday, President Muhammadu Buhari indicated that Kano had become a state of national interest on account of the spike in unexplained deaths, which we have also talked about. And the presidential task force followed up by indicating that, look, they were going to deploy a special team to Kano. So what has happened with the special team deployed from the federal system to Kano, in addition to the lockdown, which is supposed to help decelerate community transmission? Are people obedient to the lockdown, or still milling around, particularly in the old city itself?
Yes, it is a very good thing that the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria took the measures he did on Kano, and I'm sure even the state governor was very happy with that step taken by the presidency. A delegation, a high-powered delegation, was sent under the leadership of a permanent secretary working with the federal government. That's Dr. Nasir Sani Gorzo, one of the seasoned health experts we have in the country, who has worked extensively in public health. People like Professor Abdusalam Nasidi, Dr. Mukhtar, and a number of them were here, including the Director Health Services of the Federal Ministry of Health, and a number of staff from NCDC and other centers like Irua Specialist Hospital with some good level of experience in handling some of these emerging and re-emerging diseases. Ever since the team arrived at Kano and paid their courtesy call on the executive governor of the state as well as the emir of Kano, they made it clear to the team in Kano that they are not here to reinvent the wheel, but to reinforce it. And there has been good working relationship between the federal government team and the Kano state team so far. And we believe that they have come here with good intentions. And what has transpired is that the team has made it clear that their objective is to understand, number one, the causes of death, and then to see the areas in which the federal government can come in to assist the state financially, with material resources, as well as human capacity. And so far, there have been a lot of meetings and a lot of visitations to the key areas. They have visited the treatment centers. They have visited the other isolation centers for asymptomatic patients. They have come to Aminu Kano Teaching Hospital, visited the 2 laboratories, and they have visited the accident and emergency part of the hospital and the general outpatient. So they are still understudying the situation, but then they are not wasting time in taking the necessary measures aimed at addressing. And a lot of planning has gone into it, and they are educating even members of the task force, and they are satisfied with the level of performance of NCDC staff who are working round the clock with our staff in our laboratories, giving a lot of trainings with biosafety and as well as logistic management and the way to continue with the work.
All right, Professor Issa Sadiq Abubakar, thank you for your contribution so far. We're going to come back to you because Kano, as you rightly pointed out, has become a very interesting state in this matter, and we need to know what is happening in that beautiful city of Kano. And of course, all the information that we got regarding, rise in the pandemic in other parts of the north were all attributed to people who traveled from Kano to those destinations. Thank you indeed. Now, let's go to Katsina State, where we have the Permanent Secretary, Katsina State Ministry of Health, Dr. Kabir Mustafa. Dr. Mustafa, Katsina is one of the states that keeps recording steady rise in the number of cases of COVID-19. And we heard that the index case was actually imported into that state by someone who traveled to the state at some point. But now you have a good number of cases to grapple with in that state. Give us an idea of the situation so far, or bring us up to speed with the latest development so far, and of course measures being taken by your government. We also heard that a number of Almajiris have been returned to Katsina State. If that is true, how are you handling them? What are the measures put in place to ensure that some of them who may have been infected are quarantined to ensure that the virus does not, continue escalating in that state?
Yeah, thank you, Kieran, and good morning once again, listeners. Let me try to correct an impression of the first case we had, that is the index case from Dora, who happened to be a medical doctor. The actual happenings were that he had a meeting in Lagos, which he had to travel to Lagos. And the issue was he traveled to Lagos and then came back to Dora Straight. He didn't branch to his hometown. So let me just get that clear, because that had been an issue of contention. Incidentally, when he returned, I think after about a week or 2 weeks, he developed these symptoms, which I believed he was managing at whatever level. The information got to us on the day he died, and very late. We just had about 3 hours from the time we got the information in Katsina to when we were able to get to Dora. And incidentally, as we were even preparing to get to Dora, we were informed of his death. But we still went ahead and then did post-mortem, sample collection based on the clinical, presentations he had. And that was what led us to getting that first index case. Now, since the advent of that case, it was positive.
Then the report from the woman this morning.
His Excellency, the Governor, Right Honorable Aminu Bello Masari, directed that the first thing to do is to quickly get the POC list, because as we are all aware, the issue with COVID has to do with a lot of behavioral changes. And by virtue of the culture and the religious belief around the area, you have to actually do a lot of education for the people to understand. And that was the first thing that was done, even before the inauguration of the state COVID.
All right, it appears we've lost Dr. Kabir Mustafa, who is the Permanent Secretary of the Katsina State Ministry of Health, joining us via Skype. Now, we understand, okay, all right, it's back. Dr. Kabir Mustafa, please continue from where we seem to have lost you. We're talking about public enlightenment as a key to engendering behavioral change amongst the people.
And then immediately that was done, then we had the state task force, which was headed by His Excellency, the Deputy Governor. And immediately that task force was, inaugurated, issues were brought about on how do we really address this COVID-19. Funding was very key, and because of that, a funding raising appeal fund was made through a bank account, and donations started pouring in kind and also in Naira equivalent. So with that, we've been able to fix our system. Now, the first thing to do was also to comply with the federal government's directive in identifying centers where caregivers would be readily available. And for that, we had a quick interaction with the Federal Medical Center in Katsina, where their isolation center was ready to receive any such patients. And because of the need for us to have the standard isolation procedure of donning and doffing, that is how the clinicians will come in and go out, we had to do a lot of work to readjust what we had in our general hospital, the General Nigerian Specialist Hospital. We made available for a capacity of about 20 beds that can adequately attend to critical patients. The Federal Medical Center has a capacity of about 13 beds that can equally attend to critical patients. Now, as we are doing that, we went ahead to identify the IDP center in Katsina State, which from our assessment and the ongoing work we are doing on it, will provide us additional 160 beds. All these beds we are talking about are to meet the standard of what is required under the WHO guidelines. Each bed will have the oxygen supply, and then, of course, would have mobile ventilators that will be moved around. As at now, we have about 10 ventilators ready, but it might interest us to also know that as at now, we haven't started using ventilators on our COVID patients. And out of the 39 patients we have with the one death, only about 2 seem to be very symptomatic. Symptomatic in the sense that they need very close care, but most other patients had been asymptomatic. Now, going by that, we also had to consider that patients need to be identified during the process of the contact tracing, and even some that exhibit signs and symptoms that might mimic the COVID. So for these patients, we have what we call the holding area, and for the holding area too, we are using the Nigerian Civil Defense Center, where we hold the patients when samples are taken, awaiting the outcome of their results. Once the results are out and they are positive, then we move them to the fully established center where they will be managed, either the Federal Medical Center or the General Nigerian Specialist.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Kabir Mustafa, Permanent Secretary, Katsina State Ministry of Health, for your response. Now, we have another Skype connection. We want to introduce him at this time. He's the Executive Governor of Bayelsa State, His Excellency Senator Douye Diri. Senator, a pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria. You're joining us via Skype from Yenagoa, the capital. Now, Bayelsa State has lost its innocence with the arrival of the first index case. How has this altered your response plan, or otherwise triggered some response plan?
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, Nigeria. Truly, we have been diverging of Corona 2019, and our response immediately was to ensure that we went into contact tracing and to decontaminate the facility where this lady was kept, and receiving treatment. Thereafter, we also imposed a 1 week lockdown and curfew from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. And that is being observed throughout the state. Again, we reinforced our lockdown on our borders with our sister states of Rivers and Delta. And so far, through the contact tracing, we're expecting some results today, particularly of the nuclear family of the lady who tested positive. And that's so far the report and situation in Bayelsa.
Well, Your Excellency, we are not wishing that you have more persons who are infected by this disease, but going by the trends of development with respect to COVID-19, it's always a possibility that when you have one case, you should expect 2 or even more cases. Now, how prepared is Bayelsa State to cope with any rise in the number of cases? You mentioned the lockdown and, of course, the blocking of interstate borders. But what we have had in the past is that so many states who did that didn't do that successfully because most of the cases have always been imported from one state to another.
Well, you will agree with me that Bayelsa State was among the first states that took preemptive preventive measures over COVID-19, and we did very well. We did very well, and we believed that we will be able to hold on till COVID-19 abates. But unfortunately, we had this one case. Let me restate here that the lady in question had no travel history, and up until today, she is vehemently rejecting the result from the laboratory. But that's not our worry for now. For us, that is scientific, and all we need to do is to ensure that there is no spread of the disease. And so we have isolated her nuclear family, the nuclear family members, and we have gone on to the tracing of all contacts. And for us, what we have done so far, it's adequate, and we are believing that the spread in Bayelsa will be controlled.
All right, Mr. Governor, I just wanted to also ask, on the basis of what you just said now, if there's this vehement denial by the index case that, look, I'm not positive, but the scientific evidence shows otherwise, does that lead you, or indeed anyone else, to assume that perhaps statewide you might have pockets of denial of the existence of COVID-19, and therefore of the precautionary measures that ordinarily should be taken as part of the Enlightenment regime that you have put in place? Does that therefore mean that you need to do more to work on the behavioral change of your people?
Well, her denial is there, but her own situation and her case is different. She has a complex situation. What the hospital discovered was that she was hypertensive, she was diabetic, and recently they have also discovered the ulcer. And so a combination of all of these, has led to the fact that for her, she believes that these are the conditions of health in her. And for her, there is no COVID-19. Anyway, that's for her. Behaviorally, you are right when you talk about the behavior. Our people believe that COVID-19 is not something historical or cultural to us. It's something very far away. But we have also gone on to do so much of enlightenment across all the local government areas, and particularly in our state capital. Recently, I had to even embark on sanitizing the biggest market in Bayelsa, popularly known as the Swale market, and removed all the illegal structures and ensured that sanity is brought back to the market. And we will continue to do the best we can to ensure that we have sanitized our state capital and all other local government areas and ensure that COVID-19 do not spread in our state.
Your Excellency, the last question put to you by Kingsley is very germane, because when people do not believe in the existence of coronavirus, they tend to also take some other personal measures on their own. Some are even drinking ogogoro or any hot drink, believing that coronavirus does not want anything that is hot. And in your state, a good number of friends, have also said that, look, they could have local treatment on their own to cater for it. Now, how much of surveillance are you carrying out, if I may use that word, in this connection? Are you carrying out in local government areas of Bayelsa State where a number of locals will not believe that coronavirus is real? Have you really gone deep down into the grassroots of local governments in Bayelsa State to, of course, inform them of the reality on ground? And now that you have a case to handle, whether it was whether the woman is accepting the result or not, it is pertinent, that many Bayelsans should understand what is on ground at the moment.
Yeah, for now, the index case has actually brought to fore for everybody around the state to believe that COVID-19 is real, even though we have embarked on sensitization and awareness creation over this period, including using our local means of town crier across the state. As we speak, the local government council chairmen are also chairing the COVID-19 team in their own local government areas. And they are also doing a lot to create the awareness. And for me, I want to believe that there is a change in behavior, because immediately we had the index case and the COVID-19 committee met and we declared a 1-week lockdown. The level of compliance was almost about 100%. And that's points to the fact that the people are becoming very aware that COVID-19 is here with them. And so I want to believe that our people are very much aware about the reality of COVID-19 in Bayelsa State.
All right, Your Excellency, just one last question for you. For us in Nigeria, there has been the addition of another infection, if you like, a co-infection, popularly referred to as hunger virus. What is your containment strategy for hunger virus on account of the various measures being taken?
I was the one who advocated for the second phase of COVID-19. And I said the second phase of COVID-19 is hunger. And so even without an index case in our state, we gave the first palliatives across the whole state. And just this week again, we have given the second round of palliatives, foodstuffs across the whole state. And with the stern warning, of course, from me that palliatives should be given to all those who are in need, to the vulnerable, across party lines and across ethnic lines. And so even the non-natives in Bayelsa, resident in Bayelsa, were also part of those who received palliatives. And so we have tried and we are doing our best to ensure that the hunger is not as severe as it is maybe in some other parts.
All right. At this point, Your Excellency, we would like to thank you for your contribution to the program this morning. And of course, you have taken some time out of your schedule to be part of this program. We appreciate that. We are wishing you well as you battle to contain the index case. We are hoping it's not going to go further than that. Thank you again for coming on the program.
Yeah, thank you, my brother. God bless you.
All right, we've been speaking with the governor of Bayelsa State, Duru Diri. Now, you are still watching Good Morning Nigeria, and other guests are yet to talk to us. For instance, from Jos, where we have the coordinator of Plateau State Task Force on COVID-19, Professor Danladi Aboki Atu. Prof, give us a sense, if you could, of the latest development with respect to COVID-19 in Jos Plateau State.
Well, thank you for bringing us on this platform. I want to share some thoughts on the actions that we've taken here on the plateau. Recall that when the news of this pandemic hit the shores of this country, the governor of the state came out with a composite approach to address the issues on ground, particularly on the idea of adopting preventive approaches. It is these preventive approaches that saw us putting in place some structures, such as the subcommittees emerging, committees of awareness, because at the heat of this pandemic, there was this some kind of behavioral patterns that they seemed to be negative. Some were disposing some negative approaches to it, saying that it's not real. And what the government did is to engage stakeholders on discussions and awareness. And that saw us creating committees on awareness and sensitization, creating committees on health services, creating again a subcommittee on enforcement. Another one too has to do with border management. Now all of this emerged as a product of engagement with stakeholders in the state. Now here on the plateau, the governor is the chairman of the task force himself. That's to show the seriousness to which he attaches to this. And the committee swung into action about 3 weeks ago. And at the point of this sensitization, when we found out that the Lagos and Ogun, FCT were becoming epicenters of the spread, we saw the need for us to tidy up our state too by adopting some harder measures. And the governor quickly undertook a facility tour of the health facilities on the plateau to ensure that isolated centers are established. One was at Jos University Hospital. The other one was at specialist hospital at the state hospital. And of course, the third one is at Bingham University Hospital. Now, all these centers were based in Jos, and they all have facilities for isolation. Now, after the facility tour, we were made to understand that they have deficiency in terms of ventilators and so on, and other equipments. We had so far purchased 12 ventilators and distributed to them, and that's to add to the ones they had already. And other compressors and other facilities have been purchased, and BPE equipments. Now, these are put in place so that we become ready in case of this spread hits us. Now, last week when we had an index case, we further tidied up our belt by adopting harder measures. We locked up the state, locked up our boundaries to ensure that, because the index case we had actually came from elsewhere, not from within. And so we discovered that the interstate movement has been facilitating this kind of spread. We now close all our borders. We locked up the state, but along the line, after 1 week, we give them some breathing space for people to restock, 3 days or 2 days breathing space, so that people can restock their homes. And we want to tell Nigerians that Plateau State have been complying. We want to appreciate the people of Plateau State for cooperating with government in this regard. When we had an index case, what we did was to, again, isolate the entire immediate family. The immediate family are now under quarantine, and they are cooperating very well. In fact, even the immediate community has even have adopted self-isolation to safeguard themselves from that. we have so far opened up more quarantine centers. We have one at the NYC camp, the other one in Bakiladi, and we are opening this week. We are opening another quarantine center in Shandam to take care of the southern senatorial zone, and of course the one in Mango is taking care of the central zone. But when we are adding another one in Panshin too in central zone, the idea is to spread it because the contact tracing capacity is being increased now. So we are having people who even report with the level of sensitization that has taken place. Communities even report cases when they see new faces coming in. They see people exhibiting strange features. They quickly alert the health expert, who will now trace them and bring them to these quarantine centers. Again, at the border posts, once you come into Plateau State, we have to quarantine you for 14 days. After which we release you to join your families or your loved ones. This, however, there are exceptions to the rule. Of course, health experts who come to assist us in the state, normally they are allowed to do that. So far, this is what we've been doing on Plateau State. And in the first week of our lockdown, what we did was to decontaminate the whole state, particularly public places, markets, motor parks, banks, public offices, and the rest. We decontaminated the whole state in that respect, addressing all this across the 17 local governments of the state. So this is what we've done for now.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Danladi Atu there, for giving us the situation report with regard to Plateau State and its response to COVID-19. We'll come back to you later in the course of the conversation. Let's now go to Calabar. That's the capital of Cross River State, where we have Dr. Betta Edu. She's joining us via Skype. She's the State Commissioner for Health, as well as Chair of the State Committee on COVID-19. Honorable Commissioner and Dr. Edu, well, congratulations. Cross River hasn't recorded any case. So you will tell us what the secret is. But bear in mind what the NCDC has also said, that send more samples for analysis, and then let's see what the final results will be. That's one leg. Second leg, your governor, His Excellency, has also been in the news for what some persons have already described as his controversial approach to either the development of a serum or a vaccine. In all, how is Cross River approaching this?
Thank you very much. And it's to speak to Nigerians. First and foremost, I think Cross River State should, at this point, be commended for all its efforts to be able to curb the COVID-19 in our dear state. A lot of work has been done. If you followed the trends very clearly, you would recall that Cross River State was amongst, in fact, the very first state in Nigeria that basically set up its EOC and started deliberating on how to prevent this virus in our state. We did extensive work on sensitization as early as January, when there was no recorded case in Nigeria, no recorded case in Africa. I remember doing a jingle and putting on TV as early as January, and everybody thought that was too early. We don't have a case. This is just for Asia, so why bother? We went detailed sensitization, meeting with religious leaders, community heads, of course, traditional rulers, and of course, setting up systems where the town criers can get this information out to our people at the hinterlands. Beyond this, I'm sure you can recall that we were the very first state in Nigeria to begin the screening of persons coming in through our local airports. At this point, Nigeria had not even recorded a single case. What I would expect would be some form of commendation from the federal government or the NCDC to say, well done, you started on time, you've done a whole lot. My governor was the first in Nigeria to say, no mask, no movement. If you don't use a mask, you cannot move. At that point, he was highly criticized to say that the mask does not provide any form of protection for persons from the outbreak. Today, the president in his speech has clearly said that if you must go to public places, you must use a mask. All of these preventive measures were put in place by our state and even more. And then we're not being supported. We're not being supported by the federal government. We're not being supported by NCDC. We get very few things in terms of getting kits, sample collection kits. We are a population of 4.5 million persons, and then you're getting 50 to 100 kits, and then you expect that we can do community sample taking, and so of course we're doing surveillance already, but we take samples from only persons who have met criteria, and everyone who has met criteria thus far, we've taken their samples, we've sent to the lab, and the results have come back negative. We want to continue to push with these preventive measures. Remember, we have a lot to face. The governor released about 50 vehicles, which was sent to the various borders across the state, both the international and the interstate border. We have over 50,000 Cameroonians trying to find their way into Cross River State. And if we don't take these measures to ensure that we keep them out, then we would be up for a lot of trouble. Remember that Cameroon have figures rising close to 2,000 as we speak. I do not mind, of course, every case which we find or any suspected case, we'll definitely send the samples. We've had to send samples of people who don't even meet the criteria just to up the numbers. And of course, at this point, it would be important for the federal government and of course NCDC to step in and see how they can support Cross River State to do more. I do not love the pessimistic approach which insists that every state in Nigeria must have. Let's rather be optimistic to view that we should be proud of the fact that there are states in our country that do not have the virus and do everything possible to keep these states in that status. It's important for us as a country. We should not take pride in saying that more states have recorded more cases. That should not be a thing of pride. And I'm sure if Nigeria as a country, like they have already started doing, imbibe some of the steps which we have taken already, including the complete closure of interstate borders, and then, of course, preventing people from infections coming into your state, it would reduce the numbers. Of course, the curve will begin to flatten out, and we would be done with this whole episode of the coronavirus. That being
said, Dr. Betta Edu, you've spoken well so far, but I'm inclined to asking you one more question, and that has to do with some of the issues that you raised. It is not yet Uhuru, even as we're not wishing Cross River State to have any virus case presently. You have about 4.5 million people in Cross River State. If people don't move without masks, have you been able to provide the masks for the 4.5 million people in Cross River State? Of course, noting, of course, the fact that you don't just use one particular mask on daily basis. You use some of them are disposable, and I'm not sure that you now have the type of masks that one could perhaps wash and reuse again. On the issue of NCDC, which you're saying should come and assist you, we also heard that your state has said that even if the NCDC staff comes to your state, they should be quarantined for 14 days. If that is true, how then do you expect NCDC to work with the state? We are very happy about what's happening in Cross River, where there's no index case, and you have reeled out measures that you have taken so far to ensure that the status stands as it is. What's your take?
Okay, so when it concerns the masks, first we had made about over 1 million masks and are given to Cross Riverians free of charge. But this does not bring the mass production to an end. We'll continue to make as many as possible. Over 3,500 workers that are working at the garment factory, the Cross River State Garment Factory, have shift every single day. So every 8 hours, a new set comes in so that we can space them out and, of course, maintain some physical distancing and further protect them. The mask has been made of good quality, 3 layers. The outer layer, most times we use the Ankara to make it very attractive, and then the filter and an inner comfortable layer for people to use. We'll continue to produce, we'll continue to give to our people because more and more persons would need it. Remember, in this population of 4.5 million persons, children are there, and children are not supposed to come out for any reasons. All the schools have been shut down. Churches are not operational. The mosque is not operational. And of course, all the public gatherings, we've called an end to that long before now, right from February. So it's not expected that everyone will be out at the same time. The mask is reusable. When you're done using it, you use warm water and detergent to wash it. And then, of course, you dry it either outside under the sun or using your dryer. And then you iron it before you use it again. So if you have about 2 or 3, it should be able to carry. Or if you can have more, that's great. Local tailors and garment factory makers have been encouraged to also make this masks, which the state government will buy off from them and give to others free of charge. Like you said, it's not yet Peru. We have been stepping up our level of preparation. We have at least 3 isolation centers that can take up to 116 persons. We have been trying our very best to see that we can continue to do a lot of training for health workers. About 375 have opted to volunteer at us far, and we'll continue to train them. For the NCDC workers who want to come into our state, they are very welcome. All we are just being careful about is that the coronavirus tested and they're negative, and then they can come to our state and do their work. We are happy to work with them. In fact, we are waiting for them. We have a gene expert machine in our IDH hospital here in Cross River State, and we have been appealing that that machine be confirmed to be able to test for the virus, because the only other center in the south is at Irua in Edo State, and with the lockdown, it takes you close to 24 hours to get there. We have a center at Ebonyi, which we now have to rely on sometimes. So it's a bit difficult for us. This testing will be easier if we have more sample kits, if we have the center in Cross River State running, and then if we have support from the federal government to continue to see that we can keep the Cameroonians out of our borders and keep other persons who are trying to come in out of our borders. A lot of work is being done, surveillance, screening at the entrance and all of that. Continue to do more as a state. We want the federal government to step in and support us and work with us. We're even looking at a possibility where we can have a vaccine manufacturing factory built in Cross River State, which will complement the industrial revolution which the governor, Senator Professor Ben Ayade, is bringing about in the state.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Betta Edo. One of the points you made now in response to the last question is that, okay, you are waiting for the federal government team, and more particularly the NCDC, provided they tested negative, and you are not insisting, as it were, on the 14-day quarantine in Cross River upon their arrival. Is that clear? That's what you are indicating.
So what we're asking is that we have people who are negative come to our state, because we want to be able to prevent the coronavirus at all costs.
Thank you very much. Just to say what you said, that if they have been tested here in Abuja, wherever they are coming from, and they are negative, they can come into your state and then hit the ground running. Once again, Cross River State Commissioner for Health joining us via Skype from Calabar. We have, well, it's like our landlord now is the acting Secretary of Health in the FCT, Dr. Mohammed Kawo, who has soaked all of this in. I thought that perhaps we'd just get a comment from him before we take a short break, because when we come from the break, then we'll be pressed for time. Dr. Mohammed Kawo, what is the situation with the Federal Capital Territory?
Thank you very much.
We should go on break.
For us, I think we are at the cruising level. We have stabilized, not in terms of number, because the number is still rising, but we have gotten to to communities. We are testing massively. We are getting results from the communities. We have enough beds for those that would be infected. Almost all our centers are ready. We have also decided to give the communities masks to wear should they come out and interact with others, because with the confirmation of the community infection or transmission, then you need to do something about that. Interestingly, from our statistics, 41% of all patients that have been confirmed in FCT came from Mabushi, which is a community place. The next being Wuse ward, which has about 15%, Maitama 14%, and other places. Incidentally, 90% of the cases are in municipal area council, with only 2 in Buari and 1 in Gwagwalada. The next phase, aside the continuous case searching and testing and isolating, we are planning to decontaminate areas where after the first lockdown easing, people will be coming back to work. So we ensure that all the places are being decontaminated. But what we're going to do in FCT is those private places that are buoyant, we just supervise them. We direct that they decontaminate the big hotels, the big offices, while government decontaminates government buildings and other places where people will be trooping into or coming into. And also to provide and ensure that physical distancing, temperature taking, and hand washing are maintained while people continue to come. There's a presidential directive of easing. So what is most important is to ensure that when the easing comes, we don't bring more cases into the system. So that's what's happening.
Now, you mentioned Mabuchi, who's perhaps another suburb that you mentioned, Buari or something. Right. See, the federal government intends to, ease the lockdown. How do you intend to handle the situation? Because if some people would have to come to the city to work when the lockdown, is a little bit relaxed from next Monday, how are you going to handle the situation? Because one, people who live in other suburbs like Maraba, Nyanya, Karo, and the rest of them will have to come to town to work. So what is the plan that FCT has, with respect to this, and to see how you can manage the number of persons that will be coming to the city to work? Because of course, when people begin to move, we have moving buses, taxis that take overload and what have you.
And you haven't done any testing yet, say in Lugbe or say in Gwarimpa and elsewhere?
Yeah, presently, testing ongoing in all the suburbs, Lugbe, Nyanya, and all the places, because we have increased the teams and they have been dispatched to all these communities. But most importantly, I think if you listen to the SGF, they have outlined means of curtailing massive number of people coming in, and that buses are supposed to be monitored, that you can't have more than this. The taxis, you cannot have more than this. So there are outlines and processes and procedures on how to ease the lockdown. So we are not expecting massive trooping. Even the civil servants, you heard that there are going to be some grade levels that will be allowed to come. And not every staff they're supposed to come every day. Probably, finally, at the end of the day, they will say probably maybe the junior staff comes so maybe only once a week or so. So all these details is being worked out, but it's not the complete coming.
All right, Dr. Muhammad Kawu, and we're taking a short break now, and after that, of course, we'll begin to wrap up the program.
The Nigerian Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs, under the leadership of its President General, His Eminence, the Sultan of Sokoto, Alhaji Muhammad Saad Abubakar, CFR MNI, congratulates the Muslim Ummah on the commencement of the fasting of the month of Ramadan, beseeching Allah to grant us the blessings of the month and to inscribe us among the inhabitants of Al-Jannah. The Council has directed the suspension of congregational Taraweeh prayers, Majalis al-Tafsir, Quranic sessions, and i'tikaf seclusion in the mosques during the month of Ramadan. Islamic scholars and organizations are to employ the electronic media for dissemination of tafsir and other da'wah activities. Janazah, washing, shrouding, prayer and burial of Muslim victims are to be carried out by officials of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, and other government health officials. Detailed guidelines on the suspension and the janazah are available on the Council's website and are being published in national dailies and sent to the federal and state governments as well as leadership of state councils and various Islamic organizations. The Quran says, "Make not your own hands contribute to your destruction." His Eminence the Sultan praised the Almighty Allah to preserve our lives beyond the Ramadan and grant us its blessings. Mr. Yusuf Nwoha, Director Administration, Nigerian Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs, announcer.
It's time to take responsibility. So I'm staying home, watching videos and learning as well. We are all aware of the pandemic hitting the world today. The COVID-19 virus is real. A big thank you to all our health workers, doctors, nurses, everybody fighting this pandemic in their own way. Please stay home, save lives. Prevention is better than cure. Stay responsible.
Nigerians, coronavirus is dangerous. It can kill. When you see this sign, high fever, cough, shortness of breath, drowsiness, pneumonia, don't panic, don't hide, don't embark in self-medication. Promptly visit the nearest medical facility. Report all cases to the nearest hospital. Prevention is key. Avoid contact with infected persons. Avoid crowded areas as much as possible. Wash your hands regularly. Use hand sanitizers. Your life is precious. Stay alive. Live long, live right. This message is sponsored by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture and the Nigerian Film Corporation. Nigerian Film Corporation, powering possibility.
As a strong immune system increases the chances of victims surviving COVID-19. A corruption-free society creates opportunities for citizens to thrive and prosper. Build your immunity. Stop corruption now. Report all acts of corruption to ICPC on this toll-free number 0800 2255 4272. This message is brought to you by ICPC and NTA.
I just don't understand this coronavirus thing. Is it real?
See, coronavirus, known as COVID-19, it's a global problem and has killed thousands of people in China, Italy, Spain, UK, US, and other countries around the world.
Okay. Now, why are they saying that we should stay home?
Because if you go outside and get in contact with someone who is infected, you become infected and then come back home, affect your family. That's how it happens in other countries.
Now, please, help me explain what this social distance is all about.
See, as we are now, the virus travels through the air and by touch. We must maintain 6 foot distance at all times.
Oh, so it's not by washing my hands with soap and water or hand sanitizer that is only important?
Washing of our hands regularly is very important. But we must come together and fight this virus like we did Ebola. It is our responsibility to each other.
All right, welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We're on the last lap now, and let's rejoin Dr. Kabir Mustafa, the Permanent Secretary, Minister of Health in Katsina, still with us via Skype. Very briefly, tell us something. I mean, Katsina didn't have a total lockdown, as it were, from the reports that we had read in the past. Selected local governments were on lockdown. What is it that you intend to do now, considering the state of Kano, which is your neighbor, and with the allegations of dispersal of infection from Kano to elsewhere? All right, unfortunately, there's audio failure there from the Skype connection to Dr. Kabir Mustafa. Well, let's go over to Plateau State. Plateau State, where the SSG, Professor Danladi Atu, is still with us in our studios. Professor Danladi Atu, I might as well ask you the same question. Plateau, of course, has a number of neighbors, but how effective might your surveillance be, and therefore policing of your boundaries, to try to stem infiltration of persons from heavily impacted locations? I don't know. Well, Kieran, stuff happens.
At the very point where we are closing shop, but we're beginning to have some technical hitches here and there. But of course, we have done most part of the program this morning. But before we just say goodbye, you have something to tell us, just in a few seconds, concerning what happened in Abuja a couple of days ago.
Yes, last week we lost a staff nurse from Muse Hospital. The gentleman came to work on a Wednesday. He was off on Thursday. He was supposed to resume on Friday. That Friday, we didn't see him, so the colleagues of his started calling frantically. They go in touch with his neighbor and family. Eventually, they opened his room and he was
dead.
He was dead.
And what was your reaction?
So our reaction was, we immediately dispatched our public health team that went to, first of all, took sample from him post-mortem, then decontaminate him, put him in the body bags. Ideally, he's supposed to be buried, but we couldn't get into with the family. And we have the feeling it was not COVID-19 case.
But it was negative after the test.
So eventually it became negative. So what I'm saying is that it's very important.
We'll keep it there, because there's no time to do that, right? But you are saying that such should be done in Kano, right? To be able to determine when somebody dies, you take a sample and do a test immediately.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Professor Issa Sadiq Abubakar has been with us a couple of times on Good Morning Nigeria. We may have to get him back at some point to feed us in. All right, Professor Issa Abubakar, you are right there. We'd like to thank you for being with us, but are we likely to see now a change in the recording of fatalities and burials in Kano? Because last week, one of our guests from Kano said that there are no records kept. Are we going to begin to see records being kept now of fatalities and then of burials?
Definitely. With the rising number of deaths recorded in Kano, the state has instituted a measure to account for every single death. And especially with the coming of the federal government team, a lot of work will be done in this direction. So in the near future, we will definitely have to record all the deaths with laboratory results concerning COVID-19 and other diseases that might be implicated as causes of this, so that we will arrive at definitive diagnosis before or even after a person has died.
All right, thank you very much indeed, because Kingsley and I were baffled at the initial time, when somebody told us that you don't have a record of burials and what have you. Thank you for letting us know that you will begin to do that now. Dr. Mohammed Kau, Acting Secretary for Health and the Human Services Secretariat, FCT. We thank you, as always, for coming here to give us update on COVID-19 as far as the FCT is concerned. Thank you indeed. Professor Issa Sadiq Abubakar, Director, Center for Infectious Disease Research, Bayero University, and member of Kano State Task Force. It's been a pleasure talking to you this morning. And of course, we had the governor of Bayelsa State, who has already been signed off. And from Katsina Vice Cap, we had the permanent secretary, Katsina State Minister of Health, Dr. Kabir Mustafa. We appreciate your insight on this very show today. And the lady that joined us Vice Cap from Cross River State, Dr. Betta Edu, we thank you indeed. And of course, we wish you well. You are coronavirus free for now, but as I've said, it's not yet to Uhuru, so keep walking. We thank you for also coming. And from Plateau State, we had the coordinator of the Plateau State COVID-19 Task Force team in the person of Professor Danladi Altu. It's been a pleasure. Now, this is where we conclude this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. We thank you for watching. Do come again tomorrow. My name is Kirian Umayo. Stay home and stay safe.
I'm Kingsley Osadola. Stay safe.